Hello everyone and happy Friday. Welcome to our new artist Ask Me Anything session. Today we're going to start by covering a few of our most frequently asked questions over the last week that we've seen in the user guide. Let me go ahead and switch here to sharing my screen. Up on the screen you'll see the top 10 searches we had in our user guide over the past week. I want to take a moment and say hello to Joseph. Glad you're able to join me today. All right, so the first thing on the agenda here is the crop tool. And I think this is one that, is easily lost because we titled it Composition AI. So I want to make sure you know where the crop tool is, and I want to show you one really cool feature that we have in our crop tool. I'm going to start by going to our templates. I'm going to add the Fast Fix template just to go ahead and give this image a better starting point. And then let's go over to our Edit tab, click into Composition AI. You can see there's the crop symbol. It brings up the overlay so you can manually crop this however you like. But we also have this button here called Composition AI. And what this does is it looks at your image and takes into consideration the depth of the image, the objects in the image, and makes a suggestion for a crop. So let's see what the recommendation is here. And for this particular image, I actually really like this crop. I might pull this down a little bit more here to get the rest of that twig there in the foreground. But overall, I really like this crop because what it does is we now have a leading line of these roots. It comes up to the trees and leads us right up into the mountains. Whereas without that crop, this little bit over here tended to lead us out of the frame. So this is actually a really, really nice suggestion. I'm going to go ahead and hit return on my keyboard to go ahead and commit that crop, and we'll go with that. Hello, so glad you're able to join us today. Now, one other quick and fun thing that I'm going to do with this image, and this kind of suits with the current season here in the Northern Hemisphere. We're going into our fall and autumn months, where we have some really beautiful colors. So there's some trees here and some foliage. What I'm going to do is just make those pop a little bit by going into the color tool. I'm going to start in the luminance channel here under HSL. And you can see in here we have some oranges, yellows, and even some reds. And the luminance brightens up specific colors. So I'm going to brighten up the reds, brighten up the oranges, and brighten up the yellows. And you'll see that made a little bit of a difference and made those colors pop out a little bit more. From there, I'm going to go over to saturation, and I'm going to bring up the saturation a little bit on our reds, bring it back up a little bit more on our oranges, and add a little bit more saturation to our yellows. You don't want to go too far on that one, but I think that looks really good. Let's turn that off and then back on again. And with just a few clicks, we've really made some significant improvements to this image, and I think it looks great. Let's take a look at our overall before and after. So we covered quickly how to crop your image, how to use the Composition AI to get a good recommendation. And you can always adjust that or reset it if you like. Just because you click that button to see what it recommends doesn't mean you have to stick with it. The ultimate decision is yours. All right, so let's go back to our frequently asked questions for this week. And let's see, watermarking. We talked about that a lot last week. So if you have questions about how to watermark your images, I highly recommend going back and watching last week's Ask Me Anything New User Friday. And we talk a lot about that. You can also go into our user guide, which is up here in the help menu. And we go down to user guide. And that's going to pop you right into your browser where you can search the Luminar AI user guide. So you can always go up here, type in watermark. We've got some great step-by-step instructions, as well as a couple of short videos that will show you exactly what you need to do. So that's a great resource for any questions that you have. All right, let's pop back over here to some of the other questions we had this week. One that I thought was really good is clarity. So if you search for clarity in Luminar AI, we actually don't have a specific slider for clarity, but we do have some tools that do the same thing. So let me go ahead and select a different image. I'm going to go over to the catalog. Let's pull up this beautiful image here. And again, I'm going to go to my templates and choose that Fast Fix. It just adds a nice little pop of color and texture and gives us a better starting point. And then go over to Edit. Now, when I want to address clarity I think of as detail and contrast between edges and just things that make an image look overall more crisp. So the two tools that I'm going to work with primarily are going to be structure and details. Let's start with structure. I'm going to bring this up really high so you can see what it does. And once that renders, you're going to notice that not only did it add some detail, it popped the color, it added some contrast, and it really did some nice things to this particular image. Now, you might not want to affect color and depth so much. You could always use that a lower amount or even double click that slider to turn it off. And you can use boost independently of the amount. And this tends to target just the details, not so much of the tones. So you can bring that up and get more detail without actually opening up those shadows more. I happen to like that open shadow look, so I'm going to bring that up a bit too. Maybe pull back on my boost. And now let's take a look at what structure did. There's the before and the after. It's a pretty nice change. Now let's go ahead and zoom in and take a look at details. I'm going to take you in here right to the boat because there's some really nice detail of water drops along the hull of the boat, and we've got the texture of the water, the leaves, and so forth. So let's go into details and see what we have here. Let's first look at small details. That particular slider, when you use it, can make things look what I like to call crunchy very quickly. You go ahead and just rack that out to the right, and you'll see how super uber detailed that got. It's not terribly natural, but you can see that it is very powerful in pulling out some of those smaller details. I especially see it in the texture of the water drops on the boat, and even the texture of the trees here in the background. Now for a natural look, I usually keep this pretty low, and I tend to use more medium and large details. So let's go ahead and bring up those medium details. You'll see that you're going to notice here in the water along the edges of the boat some of the larger areas as opposed to that really fine detail. That's where that magic happens. I'm going to bring that back down to right about there. And let's pull up our large details. You notice that's really targeting the edges of our high contrast areas. And that can be really useful in bringing out some additional sharpness. But in general, again, I keep it pretty low. I tend to use my detail sliders sparingly because a little bit goes a long way. You can also add overall sharpening, and where I want you to look for this is going to be right here back along this tree line. You can see it's a little bit of a shallow depth of field, and right now those trees are a little bit soft. If I pull up the sharpening, those get very sharp very quickly. So you can see that that brings back some detail that, maybe that's what you want. So let's go ahead. I'm going to keep that at a slightly lower amount because I do like having that depth. And by depth, I mean the background is a little bit softer focus than the foreground. And let's take a look overall at our before and our after. So we've been able to bring out a lot of clarity and detail with those sliders. Let's take a look at our overall before and after. Let's zoom back out and take a look at the entire image. Before, give it a second to render there. There we go, there's our before and our after. And it's amazing what you can do with details and structure to give you that clarity. And if you guys have any questions, make sure you pop them into the comments below or into the chat, and I'll do my best to get those answered for you. Let's take a look at one more topic, and I want to look at keyboard. So when somebody types keyboard into the user guide, I'm fairly certain that's referring to keyboard shortcuts. So what I'm going to do is go over to my help menu again, go to user guide, and let's pull that back up, and it's going to load another instance. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the table of contents, we have a whole section here on keyboard shortcuts. And this can really make your workflow in Luminar AI so much faster and smoother if you learn some of these keyboard shortcuts. So let's go ahead and click into these. I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to look at the Mac keyboard shortcuts. The J keyboard shortcut is one that I use often. So let me go ahead and click back over here to Luminar AI. If I hit the J key, that's going to bring up everything that's clipping. So everything in red, we're losing detail in those highlights. Everything in blue, we're losing detail in those shadows. So you can make particular tonal adjustments very quickly and easily by paying attention to those clipping warnings. I can hit the J key again to go ahead and turn those off, and so forth. So I encourage you to go through here, take a look at the keyboard shortcuts, and try to memorize the ones that you think you would use most. They're very helpful and really speed things up. So if there's no other questions for today, I want to go ahead and wish you guys a wonderful weekend. I hope you guys get out and take some photos, have fun, and Vanelli and I are off on Monday. It's a holiday here in the US, so we will see you on Tuesday. See you next time, guys. Bye.